Welcome to Something to Wrestle With.
Something to wrestle with.
Bruce Prichard.
Prichard.
Well, you know.
That's not a rib.
She pooted.
Let's get to the November 4th SmackDown. This is where Daniel Puder makes a name for himself. Kurt Angle is challenging the finalists to do a easy for me to say, a squat thrust competition, which you begin in a standing position. Then you move into a squat position with your hands on the ground, kick your feet down into a plank position, but you keep your arms extended, and then immediately return to your feet back into the squat position and then stand up. So, you know, they do these drills in wrestling and sometimes even in football. And the winner here is then going to get a shoot match with Kurt Angle. And unfortunately for Chris Naraki, he wins the competition, and Angle pretty much throws him around the ring for about 30 seconds. And I believe even broke one of his ribs in the process. And then he pins him. Before we go on, what are your memories of that? Any heat on Kurt? I mean, obviously accidents happen, but this is interfering with a television show.
No, there was no heat on him. He did what he was supposed to do. The issue was that they wanted to have interaction with the WWE talent. So Paul Heyman wanted to have, and we've talked about this on the Heyman show, but Paul wanted to have Nunzio, okay, who's legit shoot wrestler, very tough kid, but he's smaller. He trained with Billy Robinson, and he is a really tough guy. But he wanted Nunzio to stretch all the guys, and that's how it started out. So from there, it went from Nunzio to Big Show to Mark Henry to Kurt Angle to all these different people. So as we're doing this, I was sitting there and I said, well, what you have to do is I went old school. And this is where I did get involved, because I went back to the Gene Anderson and style of training guys. So one thing that Gene used to do was he would make guys run the steps for hours, and he would hit them with broom handles and shit like that. And then once they ran the steps, he would make them do 1,000 squats and go run the steps some more, and then hit the ropes back and forth. And then all this other shit before they ever locked up, before they ever did anything. And then once they were blown so sky high that their legs were spaghetti, then the guy would beat the shit out of them. Okay, so, okay, now let's wrestle. And the wrestler, of course, he would be fresh, ready to go, and he would stretch the guy. The people that came back from that were the ones that really wanted to be in the business. The ones that couldn't handle that, that's how they would weed them out. Not saying that's a good way to do it or not. As a matter of fact, I don't think it's a good way to do it in today's day and age. But for this competition, my idea was, I said, well, we need to run them. We got to blow them up first. So we took them back, and there was a ramp backstage, and we made them run sprints up and down the ramp. And then we made them do these squat thrusts and all this other shit. But we had them sprint forever until they were dragging. Then once they ran the sprints, we took them in and fed them fettuccine Alfredo. So the contest in there was you got to eat so many bowls of this heavy, creamy fettuccine Alfredo. So now you're stuffing your face with fettuccine Alfredo, and the only thing that they had to drink, they had like 2, not gallons, but the next smaller size of milk that you had to wash it down with. So you had to eat what was in front of you. You had to eat the fettuccine Alfredo, and you had to wash it down with the milk. Now, and one of them may have been buttermilk as well. So now you've been running like crazy. You've eaten all this pasta, drank all this milk. Now let's go run again. You run them some more. We've made them do squats. Now it's time for them to go out and do the competition thing. So now they got to do the squat thrusts and all that other crap. And the idea was to blow them up. Well, watching all this shit, I noticed Daniel Puder, he wasn't sprinting. He was just kind of jogging, and he wasn't going hard at all. Plus, he didn't eat. He wasn't eating his pasta. And I told Johnny, I said, hey, I said, this motherfucker over here, you know, he's not eating and he's not sprinting. He's conserving his energy. So, you know, they got on him and all this shit. And I don't know that he ate all of everything he was supposed to eat because we had a time constraint too that we had to get through and we had to get these guys done. So they get up there and the one kid won and Kurt stretched him. So that all happened before they ever even got to the air. But it wasn't done in a way old school. It was guys were cheating and they were letting them slide.
Well, after this segment where Kurt's throwing Chris around, he gets on the mic and challenges everybody who's still in the competition on the outside of the ring and says, hey, if anybody wants to challenge me, just step right in. And Puder quickly raises his hand and gets in the ring. You guys knew he had a wrestling background and an MMA background. Are you in the back? Are you in the gorilla position? Do you think, oh shit, this isn't a good idea?
It was a terrible idea. And we told Kurt, you do the one guy and that's it. Nobody else. Okay. And we even showed him, you know, this guy hasn't been running. This guy hasn't been running. This guy didn't eat his pasta. I said, don't fuck with them. I said, leave them alone. I said, I said, if they win and you blow them up in the ring and, said, but you do the one guy and you get out. That's it. Well, Kurt kept going and Kurt, you know, challenged and made the challenge. And this guy sitting there and Kurt was so mad that somebody would want to face him. And at this time, you know, Kurt has just stretched this big 300-pound guy, which takes a lot out of you. And Kurt wasn't the Kurt Angle from 1996 at this point either. So, yeah, it was Kurt wasn't supposed to ask anybody who else wants me because then it makes him look like a dumbass if he doesn't take anybody. And then he took the guy and the guy got him in an arm lock and then Kurt had to pin him. But it was shitty all the way around. And the point is we never should have put ourselves in that position.
So let's talk about the actual situation. Angle and Puder are wrestling for position. Angle takes Puder down. No surprise there. But in the process, Puder gets Angle in a Kimura. And while Puder is on his back holding Kurt's arm in the move, Angle's attempting a pin. And one of the two referees in the ring, Jimmy Corderas, quickly counts 3 to end the match, despite the fact that Puder's shoulders were not down on the mat. And he bridged up at 2. Now, Wade Keller would put in the torch. From backstage, Gerald Briscoe had the ref through his earpiece count a fast pin, recognizing the situation Angle was in. Angle leaped up, got in Puder's face, asked him what he was thinking, and then went into a trash-talking spiel that was meant to look like a veteran browbeating a greenhorn, but in reality, Angle was reeling from the realization that he almost got embarrassed in front of a full arena and his colleagues, and everyone sees him as, you know, the creme de la creme. I mean, he's the guy with the real sports credentials. Chat me up here. Do you remember Briscoe giving the order to Corderas to count the pin, recognizing that Angle was in trouble?
Well, here's the whole idea behind it, though. You had an amateur wrestler, and it was amateur rules, and that was what Kurt was out there doing. But you had dumb fuck referees that didn't know what an amateur pin was. An amateur pin is not a 3 count. Right. An amateur pin is if both shoulders touch the mat, you're out. That's the pin. It's that quick. So the fact that he bridged out on 3, who the fuck cares? He was pinned. He was down. So he was pinned, and the referee didn't know any better. And I don't think, but at the same time, and I'll defend the referees here, I don't think anybody thought it would get to that point ever. So it just was, it was ill-conceived. It was ill-executed, and Kurt put himself in that position. And the kid, I mean, the kid had his arm locked in. The kid wanted to break his arm. He could have broken his arm.
I think that's what is sort of lost on everybody. If this was a real MMA fight, Kurt would have already tapped, but he's in this spot where he can't tap. Like that's not what this segment's supposed to be. So he's not going to tap, but as you said, I mean, if he really wanted to, he could have cranked that thing and it would have been a bad day for Mr. Angle.
Yeah, I think he could. I think he had it locked in pretty good. And again, you would have had to break Kurt Angle's arm before he'd tap. He's just that tough and he's that good. But why put one of your top guys in that position? And that was my argument. And that was my bitch, that I didn't like putting Kurt in that situation at all.
Angle told people backstage afterwards that his hand went numb after the scrimmage with Chris, and that's why he had a tougher time taking Puder down. And Keller would write that there wasn't any heat on Puder for doing what he did, saying that everybody knew he could have injured Angle, but he didn't. And there were a lot of guys in the back, according to Wade, who felt bad for Angle, considering that he was out there in bully mode, but got shown up, numbness or not. Quote, Kurt was working stiff with them, so Puder went into survival mode, says one WWE insider. That's what he is trained to do and what he should have done. He showed balls and guts, end quote. So chat me up. What's your read on the situation backstage? Puder comes through the curtain. Kurt comes through the curtain. What are people saying or thinking?
Well, Kurt was pissed off and I was pissed off at Kurt. I was pissed off at Paul Heyman. I was pissed off at Paul Heyman for getting in Kurt's ear and pumping him up so much that that's what Kurt felt that he needed to do. And it just made it made the business look bad. It made Kurt look bad. And there was no need for it. It was my anger, I guess is the best way to put it. So I was pissed off at Kurt for letting it go that far. I was pissed off at Heyman for getting him riled up. I was pissed off at Puder for fucking getting in there. I had a lot of pissed off to go around, but at the end of the day, it was our fault. It was our fault for allowing it to happen. And we should have gone back to Laurinaitis and those guys, man. If you're going to blow them up, blow them up. Don't half-ass do it. And don't come in thinking you forget a shooter, a guy that is trained to beat you and to hurt you. Okay. And that's what Kurt Angle was for so many years. Then we took that away from him and we taught him how to dance and we taught him how to work with people and not hurt them. So he's not in that mode. He's not in that killer instinct mode. Now you've got a kid who's coming from the world of shoot and hurt and do what you have to do to win, who they have not taught how to dance yet. And you put those guys together. Yes, Kurt, in my opinion, for many, 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 many years was probably the baddest human being walking the face of the earth and the toughest son of a bitch I've ever seen. However, at this time, man, he was broken down. He had nagging injuries, and he wasn't that same guy. And to put him in the ring with somebody that was hungry and someone that had been doing nothing but that, it's not fair to Kurt, and it's not fair to us, and it's just wrong, and it was a bad call. So I don't blame Puder for what he did. Fucking go out there and make a name for yourself, kid. Here's an opportunity. Go make a name for yourself. Why not? That's what he thought he was supposed to do.
Do you think this incident hurt Kurt's rep backstage at all?
No.
Kurt has said that, this is a very awkward situation. His neck is so bad he can't even do 5 push-ups. But one of the ideas was that Vince wanted him to wrestle all of the finalists, and he didn't think he was worried about Puder at all, but he was more concerned about the 2 big guys. He says at the time he only weighed 207 pounds and his body had started to deteriorate. His neck is just killing him. And he says when he wrestled Chris, that front headlock he got him in and pushed him over, he jammed his head into the canvas. So his hands go completely numb. And he's just trash talking and opened his mouth and says, who else wants some? And then there you go. That's how this whole Puder thing came to be. It is interesting because Kurt would write in his book, the whole thing was, it wasn't supposed to be an ultimate fighting contest. It was a wrestling match, but there was supposed to be a submission, but he was a moron and he put his back on the mat, and it wasn't supposed to be a 3 count. It's supposed to be a 1 count, like in amateur wrestling.
And let me interrupt there. And that was the fail safe on everything, because when we talked to everybody beforehand, it's like, it is amateur rules, because there was no doubt, no matter who it was,
He can take him down.
That Kurt couldn't pin him. No, that Kurt could pin him.
Right.
So that was the fail safe on everything. So that's why, when the referee counted 3, it's like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
It's a 1 slap and it's out. So we had talked about that, and that was the fail safe, that no matter what happened, everybody felt confident that Kurt could get him on their back and that Kurt could pin him.
I do think it's fun though, that you're fired up at the referees for doing a 3 count, but they're in a professional wrestling ring at a professional wrestling show wearing a professional wrestling outfit where they've been
doing amateur shit.
And you're like, you fucking dumbass, doing exactly what we've sold tickets for and you've done your whole life.
Yeah. Doing a goddamn, hey, we're doing a reality show inside of goddamn entertainment show with an entertainer and a shooter who's real, who goddamn, we want real rules, motherfucker.
What's confusing for you, shooter boy? That's what's fun to me though, is realistically, if he would have done a 1 count, the crowd's going to be like, well, he didn't pin him. That was only 1, because we as wrestling fans, we're at a pro wrestling show. We've been trained to believe a pin is 3. He kicked out at 1 or whatever. So anyway, it's just
silly.
It's fun to hear you
silly.
but my favorite part is you're fired up on it.
I am. I'm
dumbass.
fucking hot.
That is so good.
Motherfucker.
I guess we should talk about the end here, but before we do, let's talk about Paul Heyman, because I had never heard the story when you were saying a little earlier about the whole Kurt Angle incident, that it was Paul who was in Kurt's ear getting him fired up. How much blame do you think Heyman had? I mean, had Heyman not gotten in his ear and really firing Kurt Angle up, would he have made the secondary challenge to Puder? Would any of this have even happened?
Had Kurt not got in,
had
Paul not got in Kurt's ear, Kurt wouldn't have even been out in the ring in the first place.
I see.
So in my opinion, it was Paul who got Kurt fired up to go to Vince to demand to be in that spot and convince Vince that he was the one to be in that spot.
Puder says some of his best memories of OVW are when Paul came down and they got to work together. He said he really likes Paul and he's super blessed to have Paul in his life, even all this time later.